So I think the biggest thing that stands out maybe with my story is that I had an abortion as a Christian young woman. That surprises a lot of people to hear that, but I grew up in the church and my parents were very involved. I was there every time the doors were open. In high school, I began to date and had a lot of pressure from the guys that I was dating to become sexually active, and I eventually gave in to that pressure. And it wasn't too long before I became pregnant, and I hid it for a little while, as long as I could, but my parents eventually found out, and my mom came to me one day and she surprised me and asked me the question, do you want to have an abortion? And I was in shock. I knew that what I had done in having sex outside of marriage was wrong. But in my young mind, I knew it's like, oh, but abortion's really wrong. So I just told her, I said, no, I don't want to do that. I want to keep this baby. And my parents were really good to support me in having my daughter. But now I had a daughter and I was trying to do the right thing, going to college, going to church. And again, because I didn't have much discipleship in the area of relationships, I just ended up in another relationship, ended up sexually active again, and ended up pregnant again. The relationship that I had with my boyfriend at the time was very new. We didn't know each other. I had been very foolish in my relationship decisions, and but I thought naively that he cared about us and was going to be there for us long term, and it ended up that tragedy struck my family, and my world came crashing down one night when he had been watching her for me, and while I was working one of my part-time jobs, he was caring for her, and he ended up sexually assaulting and shaking her to death. So when I was at the point of my crisis, we went to the hospital for a while. We didn't know what was going on with my daughter, but when the doctors came and told us that she was gone, my world just became a blur. There were a lot of extenuating circumstances, and we hadn't even left the hospital, and my parents were already pressuring me. With that pressure, 4 days after we buried my daughter, I ended up flying to a bigger city from where we lived. I think because my parents didn't want anybody to know that we were going to have an abortion, and I walked into that clinic, and it just was dark. It was a dark place. And I don't think many people many women, they'll talk about their abortions, but they don't ever go into the details of what a place like that is like. And I remember going in and having the abortion, and just incredible emotional pain, physical pain, and then being a believer, spiritual pain. And I just remember thinking years afterward, after having my abortion, that I wish somebody would have told me what it would have been like to walk walk into that clinic with life, carrying life, and walk out with nothing but death, and a sense of death. And that I would be on this cold table, giving up life and trying to suppress my own screams or cries of pain as I'm hearing some girl in the other room crying out, and just how awful that experience is. And I wish that somebody would have told me, Camille, you don't have to do this. And instead of these people throwing your baby's body in the trash, your baby can go into the loving arms of a couple who desperately wants a baby to love and to care for, and that you can share God's gift with them. Because had I known that, I think I hope that I would have had the courage to go through with a really hard 9 months of pregnancy with grief, but to know that there would be something good at the end of that. And it's interesting, the tears that I cry. My abortion was 20 something years ago, and they're not tears of condemnation. I know Christ has forgiven me, but there's still grief. There's always, I think, that grief. But because of Christ, there's hope. And I'm so thankful that He finally brought me to hope. The first probably year or so after my abortion, I was not spiritually lost, but I was just mentally and emotionally lost. I had really lost my way and spiraled into a lot of destructive behaviors, and working with a lot of post-abortive women over the years, seems like it's a common theme to try and self-medicate with something because the pain is so great, emotionally and spiritually, and sometimes even physically. So the Lord, in His kindness, eventually brought me to a place where I could get help from His Word. And one of my favorite Bible verses is Psalm 107:20, that says He sent His Word and healed them and delivered them from all of their destructions. And that was so true for me. And I'd grown up in the church and heard a lot of Bible over the years, but I don't know that it had ever really penetrated deeply into my heart and really come out in application in my life. And so when I began a post-abortive Bible study for women, God just used it to radically change me. It really is living and active, and it met me in my grief. It met me in my anger. I had a lot of anger over what had happened to me that led up to the abortion decision. And I think a lot of women who are post-abortive, they're angry and they don't even realize that they're angry and how that's affecting their relationships in their life. God worked through areas of forgiveness and just healing. I needed healing for a lot of grief and for the regret from my own decisions, and God just transformed me. And my husband, even when I got done with the Bible study, he looked at me and he said, "You are a completely different woman." And that's what Jesus can do, is He changes us, and He saves us, and He redeems us, and He truly does bring that beauty from the ashes.